Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. My name is Daniel Hatewell, and as always, I'm joined by Simon Delaney. Now, we're getting more creative with our podcast titles, and today's title is this: Talking to someone who has spoken to everyone in lead gen. And although that is something of a hyperbole, our guest today has his own podcast where he does speak to pretty much everyone in the industry, and that includes yourself, Simon. You were a guest on his show a few months ago, weren't you?
Very nice it was too. Very enjoyable experience.
And you know, now the microphone is in the other hand, so to speak. What are you trying to find out as you flip it on, Michael?
Flip reverse it. I think Michael's just someone who's got massive experience in the lead gen world. He's worked in it for a long time before he then started running shows and stuff. And one thing you'll know as well, when you're running a podcast, I don't know how many episodes he's done, quite a lot. So he's spoken to a lot of people in lead gen. You pick a lot of tips, hints, experience up, find out what the people are doing. So I'm sort of interested to dig into that and see the take from behind the other side, I guess.
Yeah.
What absolutely. Do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the aim is to try and, I don't know how many shows he's done, hundreds and hundreds of shows. It's to kind of, within an hour of our show, whatever it's going to be, pick out the best bits from that and kind of condense it all together, which is going to be a challenge because he's got a lot of information, but it's what I'm looking forward to. So yeah, let's get cracking. Let's get Michael in.
Do it.
Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, welcome, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. We're really happy to have it on because we're big fans of your podcast, so we're really happy to have you back with us.
Thanks.
And how are things going over in America at the moment? Things all right?
Yeah, I mean things are okay. With all this COVID stuff, when it all first started happening, people were saying, the new normal, and I hated it. I was like, this is not the new normal. But now I find myself almost a year later going, yeah, this seems to be normal. All these lockdowns and all this kind of stuff. But so yeah, we're plugging along, and I'm in California, which is currently locked down. Very similar to there in the UK. You can't do anything except go to the grocery store, or at least you're not supposed to do anything except go to the grocery store and essential things. But it's been so long. We there's some businesses that are sort of fighting against some of these guidelines and staying open and all this kind of stuff. And but yeah, we're plugging along, and things are going okay from a business standpoint. Lead gen is thriving. These companies in our industry are thriving, and so that's good. But yeah, it's we're dealing with everything that gets thrown at us.
So Michael, I normally give like a little introduction of the guests on our show and kind of explain what they do. And when I came to writing yours, I realized that it's actually quite hard to do because there's so much to say that I wanted to condense it and be concise. So I thought I might just flip it back to you and just sort of ask if you could give us a little bit about your history and the history of lead gen world and what you guys do.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try to make it short. I think generally speaking, I am a supporter of performance marketing and lead gen, and a connector today, and to connect people and companies together. And but I got into this industry, I think a little over 15 years ago, as a lead buyer for a mortgage and insurance company. We bought 400 plus leads a day to feed about 100 agents that we had in our office that were calling out on leads from multiple partners that we would buy our leads from. And when I got that job, I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I quickly figured out that it's very difficult to find good, at this time, good legitimate lead sources that, were honest, that said, hey, because one of the problems I found was that they would all say the same thing. They would say, oh yeah, all these leads are from paid search. They're organic search. They're all the best quality leads. But before you knew it, after you spend thousands of dollars, you would find out that they weren't from paid search. They were maybe a list. Maybe they were from another co-reg offer or something like that. And I got pretty frustrated. So I started writing a blog about my challenges as a lead buyer for a mortgage company. And it was an anonymous blog, and so just try to just bring out some of this bad stuff that was happening out to the open, so we can all talk about it and figure out how to solve the problem and come together. Anyway, that led to I went to the lead gen side of the business as well. I had an agency. I worked for an agency. We generated leads for mortgage and solar, insurance. And then I joined, I was asked to lead a group called the Leads Council, which is an association here that promotes best practices, regulations, guidelines, and helps this sort of industry continue to build trust and transparency. After many years, I thought, I wanted to start a conference, and really with the same intent, which is to bring the industry together, highlight good companies that are doing good things, highlight best practices, help lead buyers be successful. Because, my core belief is that if a lead buyer can't be successful with leads, then none of us can be, right? So they need to understand how to close leads. They need to understand how to vet out good lead sources and find good lead sources. They need to know how to generate their own leads. And so, I've always tried to focus on, helping lead buyers be successful. And so we do that through Lead Generation World, which is our conference. We're really excited to come to the UK, and we think that there's a real opportunity to help do the same thing, which is bring the industry together, talk about some of the issues, talk about best practices, really sort of expose maybe some of the negatives so we can fix them, and help this industry grow. So long story short, I consider myself sort of just a connector and promoter of all things good in lead gen.
Do you know the blog that you mentioned? Have you ever told anyone that was you?
Yeah, it eventually came out. So the blog was called Lead Critic. After about a year of writing, people sort of figured out that it was me. And then I never put my name on it, but
Is that when you started seeing like the green dot on you and stuff?
Yeah, right. Well, it became, there were some articles on there that did expose, some things. And I think that's why it was pretty popular at the time, because I was being honest with people, and I was saying, hey, this company is not doing the right thing, and here's why. And this company is doing the right thing, or these are, so, it was fun at the time. But I was never a writer, so having to sit there every night and write articles was just not my thing, So at some point, I just got burnt out on it.
It probably offered a massive amount of value to people when used it as a resource, and I suspect, because like you said, I guess it's changed a bit now, but I don't know. Were you talking like back 2006, 2007? This is right or something.
Yeah.
Very murky world then, wasn't it? No one. The only time you found out like where a lead came from is when you try to call it.
That's right. Yeah, and that that's a major issue, right? Is transparency and determining where leads are actually coming from. And so that was the first thing I noticed on this job. I walked into having to deal with, I think, 25 different lead sources, and having to find more. And as you know, and any lead buyer on watching this knows that lead quality goes up and down. So you're either firing sources and bringing on new sources. It's constant. It seems like it's constant, of pausing, starting based on, the performance of different lead sources. And, but yeah, the first thing I, realized is that I would get phone calls all the time because people knew our company bought a lot of leads, and they would call and they go, yes, the same story. And you wouldn't find out where these leads were coming from, because they tell you a website that they didn't even use, that looked really pretty and had all the good stuff on it. But, the leads weren't generated from that website, So I found ways to figure all this stuff out. And those are some of the things I talked about on Lead Critic, and try to help other lead buyers sort of navigate the industry as well.
What we used to find as well, it just reminded me, is so we used to buy and sell leads in a similar sort of time period. Is you'd put a cap on one, and then you'd find out they'd been supplying like 3 other companies. So 3 of the lead sources that you thought were actually one of the ones that you're already using, and you'd just be like, why is this not known? Like, why are you all thinking this is okay? I remember it happening all the time.
It's very incestuous. I mean, there would be times like that where we'd get duplicate leads, the same exact lead from multiple sources. You're like, what's going on here, guys? This lead came from this source over here and this source. Oh, well, we work together, and sometimes, I don't know. It was crazy. It still happens today, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it does. I think if you go over to certain countries in Europe, it's like standard practice. They, it's like the first thing you learn in the job. We have a cap, buy from someone else, or sell the leads that we generate to someone else, and they sell it back to the same client.
Yeah, I mean, it gets tricky. So here, it's standard for a lead to be sold up to generally 3 times, sometimes 4 times. So the standard, like if you think of Lending Tree, I don't know if you're familiar with Lending Tree here in the United States, one of the older lead generation companies that sells mortgage, a bunch of different types of leads. Their marketing messages: when banks compete, you win. So they're when you fill out a form, you're going to get multiple offers, right? You're going to get 3 offers from a bank, and then the idea is that you can compare those offers to make a decision. So they're going to sell that lead to 3 different banks. Those 3 different banks are going to compete for your business. Well, that generally applies to most lead sources here. And so what happens is, there's lead sources that, they want to maximize, they want to always sell the lead 3 times, right? But maybe their network, they don't have anybody to buy it. Maybe they only have 1 buyer or 2 buyers for the lead. So they only sell it 2 times versus 3 times. So what a lot of them will do is go find another lead seller and say, I'll sell you this extra leg, this one distribution that I still have available. I'll sell it to you. And then you sell it to your clients, right? That one time. So now it gets bounced over to some other lead
It's got to 6 people now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, yes. And maybe now, I think it's less now here, at least in the United States, that happens. Generally, they now are smart enough to understand that if that lead does get sold that many times, that it's bad for their business, right? That the lead quality is going to shoot down dramatically, and people aren't going to close the leads, and it's going to be bad for everybody. So now I think the industry is relatively mature in that it goes, they make an agreement that no, you only sell that lead 1 time, however many times we have available, you sell it. Anything more than that, we have a problem. And they do have a problem, so.
Yeah, I think in the UK they do it more like they'll sell a lead exclusively just once straight at the beginning, and then they'll sell it again like 2 weeks later and call it like semi-mature or whatever, I don't know. And then 30 days it becomes vintage or retro or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean that's a problem, right? Because now if I buy a lead and I'm calling it, and then some other company comes in 2 weeks later and tries to steal that, and then 30, you're like,
yeah. Well, what they'll try and do is work on the dialing cycle of the company. So they'll be saying, right, what's your dialing cycle? So they'll go 30 days or whatever, and we call it for 2 weeks, rest it for a week, call it for a week. Then they might sell it at the end of that. The problem is if they don't get the dispositions back of what's happened in the call center, exactly what you're mentioning. So the person's already switched and they get a call again. But the other thing is it comes down to this, who owns the data, I guess, as well. So if you're collecting it on your own brand as a lead generator and selling it to a lead buyer, what's the opt-in? What's this person expecting to happen? And I still think that's a murky area personally that people haven't quite I don't know, in the US they might have done, but there's still this who owns it, when really the consumer themselves owns it, right? They sort of need to make the decision I guess, what happens to them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's transparency and there's an agreement, and the brand or the lead buyer understands what's going to happen, and the consumer understands what's going to happen, then, and we all agree to it, then I guess that's okay. But
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I mean, I know there's companies here that do something very similar, big companies that will they do it under the guise of consumer service, customer service, and so they'll generate a lead, they'll sell it, but then they'll contact that lead again and go, "Hey, just want to check up and make sure you got, whatever it was that you were looking for. Did you? No? If not, we'll help you again." Right?
Mm.
So they kind of do it under the messaging that, oh, we're just really trying to help this customer out find something. And if they hadn't found it with you, with the person we already sold the lead to, then we're going to help them and sell it to somebody else.
Yeah. Quite a good way of doing it, I guess. Like, at least they're trying to help, or whether it's revenue based or like genuinely helping.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, as a lead buyer myself, I do have. I'm not fooled by that thought that if the consumer hasn't gotten a quote or whatever it is from me, whatever the product is, within 14 days, my guess is I'm going to be relatively unsuccessful with it anyways. But because my guess is most of the business is done within the first week maybe of trying to contact somebody, and then after that it really just, the conversion rate goes horrible.
Mm.
But at the same time, I bought that data, and I bought that sort of consumer, that opportunity, and I would like to maybe reach out to them again in 30 days and 45 days and not have it be resold to somebody else, But I don't know. It's a tricky thing, but.
Mm.
So, Michael, you're in a unique position in the sense you get to talk to a lot of people in the industry, I guess, quite frequently, and oftentimes these are going to be people who are really doing well in the industry, I guess, if you want to speak to them. So I'm guessing you can learn a lot from them. And are there some things you've learned from doing the podcast which you've then been able to apply to your own work in any way, or just important things you've learned in general that you think, yeah, I remember that's really stuck with me?
Yeah, I think for me, I always get intrigued with, the tech companies, like a Datable, and just hearing what they're doing, what sort of processes are being implemented in the conversion or the funnel. More recently, I've been intrigued by I did a podcast with a CEO of a company called Aimtel, and Aimtel does the web notifications. When you go to a website and you agree to notifications. Well, I was like, how's this working in terms of lead gen and traffic generation, all this sort of stuff. So I'm always intrigued by, how new things are sort of coming around, which that's not necessarily all that new. I think it's been around for a year or so, but to me, it was new. But hearing these sort of new strategies on communicating with prospects and consumers and all that sort of stuff are always intriguing to me.
It's we just did a podcast with a lady named Kelly Gordon, who mentioned SEO clusters that we'd not heard of before. We'd heard of the concept, but not the name SEO cluster, which is, have you heard of it? Or?
No. What is that?
So it's this thought that privacy is going to overtake your ability to run a lot of ads and do retargeting and have pixels firing and whatever. So a lot of companies out there are building SEO clusters, like massive ones, of either sites or blogs or articles around the areas they want to collect leads in, because they think everything's going to be intent based on search. So, for example, if you're in the education space or mortgage, like you said, you just build 2,000 articles around that and just flood anything to do with mortgages or education, whatever it is, so that all the organic search is going to come to you. This is like one of these ideas that people are thinking may happen under privacy laws currently.
Yeah, that's interesting. It kind of, goes full circle, right, to 10 years ago when it was all content based, sort of gaming the search engines by flooding SEO content. And yeah, it's interesting because I guess we have gotten a little lazy on that right now with we're able to target behaviorally on websites, retargeting, all these sorts of things have sort of taken our eye away probably from SEO a little bit. So that's interesting.
But yeah, you're right. That's what I thought a bit as well. Is like it's just sort of going back in time. But these cycles, I guess, could reappear if, like, it's a necessity and you can't do anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting concept there.
So I guess I'm just trying to think about people listening to this podcast, hopefully, and trying to put myself in their shoes and think, what would I want to know? What could I ask you that would be really useful to me? So I guess what I want to know is, are there any kind of patterns you've seen emerge amongst the brands that you think are like really smashing lead gen and are doing it really well that people can maybe implement or follow and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, and maybe I'll start with something and then kind of we can dig into it. But one of the from a brand perspective, well, let me take a step back. The industry, the lead gen industry in the United States has gone through a number of different evolutions to be where it is. And I think, and this is why I think we're coming to the UK and Europe with the conferences, because I think there's opportunity for the industry to sort of follow some of those same trends that happen in the US to help it grow. And part of that was, over the last 10 years, as I alluded to before, there was no transparency or trust and best practices that were really promoted. And so now we have companies like a Jornaya or an Active Prospect, very similar to in the UK Contact State, that provide an opportunity to identify a lead's born date. It's like back in the day, they used to have born on dates on Budweiser or whatever here. When the beer was actually made. Same thing goes for leads. It identifies exactly where the lead was created, what website, what time, all this sorts of stuff, so it can be proven that this is a real legitimate lead. So that started about 6 years ago, and that really opened the door to promoting good companies that were doing sort of quote unquote the right thing. And generating leads on the websites that they're telling you they're doing. So that really helped boost lead quality. And then the promotion of best practices. I mean, we have companies that buy thousands of leads a day, and being able to call them immediately, whether it's through text message or these days or phone calls or whatever it may be, those calling it twice the first day, calling it once the third day, waiting a day. These specific best practices around calling has been perfected really here by a lot of companies. And so now I see the industry as being relatively mature. It understands how to identify good leads. It knows how to close those leads into sales for the most part. So it is interesting to watch that evolution and see companies be really successful with buying leads here in the United States. So I'm not sure that really answered your question, but there may be something there we can talk about.
Yeah. I remember Janaya. We started. What were they called before the bit with the tokens?
Lead ID.
That was it. Lead ID.
Yeah.
That's when we worked with them. So we worked with a big EV electric vehicle company, the biggest in the US at one point. And so we were doing the lead generation, so they worked with them, and I remember they put lead ID. So it creates like a token. It's a bit like crypto coins almost. So it's like creates a token on the gateway to the lead, and then the same token gets created like internally, and then they can marry them up and know like, oh, this is a legit lead. And it's some like JS that the lead generator has to bang on their form, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
It's interesting how it's almost like a precursor to how you'd use like crypto almost, like this idea of like conjoining two bits of disparate information so that you can add them together. I remember at the time when we implemented it, because what we had to do is do the call in like via an API, I think, to pull out the code that had been generated to match it up when the lead came in.
Yep.
And thought it was, pretty cool. And it's, I think you're probably right. Like in the UK, we definitely haven't, like, there's some companies that might have done that reached, sort of Janaya stage where they've realized like putting this on the form. But what I think happens is in the UK, and it might do in the US, is that the brands very rarely control the pages that the leads are being generated on, number one.
Right.
Number two, even when they're being generated externally, it's almost like it doesn't really matter. As long as the questions are being asked, they're not, I guess the sort of scrutiny into the journey isn't as great as it has been in the US, for the lead, because I get a feeling over there that it gets like much more scrutiny in terms of how it's going to be created.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And didn't you have a post the other day on LinkedIn about this, about it not necessarily being the factor making it a great lead? And I think you made a really good point about it. Was it something about being a quality lead and not being quality,
compliant. It was to do with compliance. Yeah, it was like,
yes.
Compliance doesn't mean great. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And just because you have a identification and where they'll come doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a great lead. So by no means am I saying just because, but yeah, it's actually a very simple concept. All they did was attach a numerical ID number to everything that got generated from that lead and put it into the the data, the capture form. And then it gets posted or API to wherever it wants to go. But that goes along with it, and then that ID goes to the warehouse, sort of at Jornai or Active Process or Context State, wherever it is. And I know I'm not being technical because I don't really know the the very specifics about it, but the ID gets stored in there, and now with a date and all this sort of time and IP address and none of the personal identification information, but all the information that you want to know about where that lead was generated is there in a third party sort of storage where anybody can go in and, if they have that code, can go verify where it came from. So it's very simple, but it allowed a third party a neutral third party to sort of manage that. Hey, this is where it came from, good or bad. This is where it came from. And here you can verify it here as well, and what they
it's like it's like a brand, wasn't it? Like a stamp. Like
yeah. And they went to all the like lead buyers, right? And they said, make your lead sellers put this on. You want them to have this on there. So they basically went to the buyers and forced a lot of these lead generators to put on this ID. And a lot of them didn't want to do this because they thought it was going to expose, their lead sources and all this. But the good lead generators did. They saw the benefit of it, and they put it on there. And so now, like you said, most lead buyers, at least here, don't have their own, aren't generating leads on their own property, web properties. They're buying it from third parties, and so now they can identify it more easily. So yeah, I think that really helped, really catapult trust and transparency in the industry, which is, I think, paramount for the industry to grow, because there's a lot of, bad actors out there. There's a lot of companies that are, selling data lists, and that's not leads. Those aren't leads, those are lists, and, a lead is somebody that specifically raises their hand and says, I would like you to call me, and that's a lead.
100%. I think like one of the things in the UK as well is that I'm just trying to think of like why the difference would be with something like Janaya, because you're right, it's like a really simple thing, but it was just effective, and that's like most great things are a bit like that, just solve a problem, like boom, it doesn't really matter whether it's complicated or not. I think in the UK, one of the issues can be, so there's the major lead buyers in the UK are outsourced call centers. So a brand sits above them. They'll hire like 10 call centers that act as sales houses. They train all the agents, and then they work on like a cost per seat that they rent, or maybe even a CPA. And then either the brand buys the data and they feed it to the call center, or the call center buys it themselves. And the operating costs for this are huge, right? Because if you've got like a call center with 400 people sitting there, and they're like, cost is, I don't know, £15 an hour or something, and then you have data costs on top of that, and you're trying to squeeze this margin out of the CPA. It's like they're almost loath to pump more money into the data because the overheads are already so large. But it's a bit of a weird one, right? Because it's like, well, just reduce your agent head and put more money. I think we spoke about it when we did it, but I feel like that's been realized in the US, not necessarily in the UK.
Yeah, well, it's a different strategy, right? Because not only are there those operating costs, but you're also having to feed this like never-ending hunger of data, right? Because you've got this, predictive dialer that's dialing hundreds of numbers at a time, and you need to continue to fill that up. And you can't do that with expensive leads, right?
No.
I mean, you can't do that. You have to put in lists or like very inexpensive data to keep that going. So it's like that sort of spiral downwards, right? It's like I need more data to feed this, even though the conversion or the contact rate is horrible. My costs are going up, so now I need to get cheaper data, and it's like this balance gets out of whack. Of how to continue to feed that strategy. And it does work. We have, there's companies, there and here that have perfected it. They understand that they finding a low cost strategy call center that knows how to dial out on a lot of data, and then transfer it into maybe a hiring payer salesperson or something like that, depending on what the product is a good strategy. Now you've got a high quality salesperson taking inbound calls with people that are actually interested, not wasting their time calling out on people that aren't. So it works, but that's not a strategy where you want to put high quality leads into, right? It's just going to be, at least they don't do that. They don't seem to want to spend money on buying high quality leads and putting it into a third party call center. That just seems to be what I've seen.
Yeah, we've seen it sort of transition slightly. So some of the ones that because what we see is we feed the data into them, right? So it's like the brand will license the software, and then feedback the metrics and stuff. So we see that it goes in. I think what they do is just separate the agents. So they put like training agents on the lower quality stuff, and the better agents on the higher. So they sort of run them together. But you can't help but feel like if you're getting the lower quality stuff, it's just like being a bit demoralized. You're like getting one sale every 3 hours, and then the guy next to you is getting like 2 every hour.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I've noticed that through my years of looking at all these different companies and talking with them, what works for one company doesn't necessarily work for another company, and maybe that's based on their culture, maybe that's based on their training, their sales process, all this sort of stuff. But there are companies out there that thrive on inexpensive data, leads, low intent leads. They do phenomenal. They figured out all the costs and the different things in the sales process, and they just do very well with it. They don't do well with expensive high intent leads. And then there's companies that do the opposite, that only buy the best quality quote unquote leads, or the most high intent or the most expensive leads, and they do very, very well. And they don't know how to do a process for inexpensive data that you have to maybe call for long periods of time.
It's interesting you mention it. Maybe because I go on about it all the time. Maybe I should just accept it like that. These guys are phenomenal at converting low quality leads.
Yeah, it
Leave
works.
it at that.
Yeah, it works for them. One of the things we did, and maybe people can take this as an idea, but when we were calling, we had about 120 agents calling out on third-party leads that were shared. These are leads that are sold to multiple mortgage companies. So we were one of them. Obviously, speed to contact is extremely important when you're competing with somebody. So we would have the best leads that will come in real time, fresh leads, go to the best salespeople, and they would call it immediately and get someone on and close it. Then a week later, if those leads didn't get contact or closed, we'd send it down to a tier 2 sort of agent and tier 3. And we would do that for 4 weeks. It would sort of go down this waterfall, and the best guys would get the new ones, the new hires or something like that would call week 4 and follow up, and then they would transfer it over to a good salesperson. But we kind of waterfalled who got the lead, and we would redistribute the leads based on time. So for the first few days, the best guys would get it. They'd have their first swing at the bat and see if they can get it. If not, then it would go to a tier 2 guy that would call the leads, that were from day 5 to, I don't know, day 10. And then day 10 to day 14, they would go to somebody else that's maybe a new hire, something like that, and kind of just waterfall it down. It seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah, I think they do a similar sort of thing. It depends on the call center, like you said. So there's no one size fits all, I guess. From what I've seen, a lot of places will do like fresh lead comes in, dial straight away, and they actually keep it in the dialer. So they'll make sure it goes to a great agent to begin with, and then it just gets dispersed amongst the wilderness after that. So they can sort of decide who's going to get it after. But no, it's a great point that you make, which is everyone has their own thing that they're running with, and you can't really shoehorn one thing into another.
Yeah, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to something you said pretty early on, Michael, and you said one of the motivations behind starting lead generation world was to encourage the best practices within the industry. And, we love, me and Simon, we always talk about that. I'd almost go as far to say we only work with people who do the same, or at least a version of what we believe is right. But the flip side of that, which I want to ask you about now, is what are the bad practices you've seen? You don't have to name names or anything, but what's some of the bad stuff you've seen over the years that kind of motivates that, I assume?
Put the blog live again.
Yeah, I know, right? I try to look, because the blog is taken down, but I try to go on what's that site you can
Oh yeah, the history one where you go back to it.
Can go back. Yeah, you can go back, and there's some articles on there if you can go. Oh, I think Wayback Machine is.
That's it, Wayback Machine.
Yeah, you can go back and see some articles on there. Boy, it's all those things that you've heard, unfortunately, right? It's back in, and this is not, I don't think, happening now, at least in the U.S., but I'm sure it's happening somewhere. But companies would use bots, right, to fill out forms. So they would take data, and then they would use bots to make it look. They'd buy blocks of IP addresses, so it looks like you can't identify exactly where the bot is located. And they would go to these forms, and they would they have a bot that would fill out the form with data that they purchased, from a list or something like that, and it would look like it's being filled out in real time. And then get sent to somebody. Now there's fraud detection platforms out there that can identify if there's a bot on your form, right, and filling it out. And so, that's been sort of stopped. There was, companies doing toolbar type of spam. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's like where somebody they think they download a toolbar that goes on their browser, but what it does is the toolbar actually changes everything, sort of what you see on the website. So I can go to let's say a Bank of London website, and there'll be a link on there to check out a checking account. Well, it may then lead you to another website. Instead of it'll lead you away from the Bank of London website. So that was happening. So people were basically stealing traffic from legitimate sources and pointing it other directions, which was a problem. That's been solved. Leads being oversold is obvious, an obvious one that's, happened. I think that's being stopped to some extent. I think now is the problem is that resold thing, right? Is what I talked about earlier. And I don't know if it's a real problem, if there's transparency behind it, but, I think now the focus of the industry is how do we ensure that the consumer is having a good experience, and not being called by hundreds of not hundreds, but numerous companies
Tens,
that they didn't
yeah.
10 of companies they didn't expect, and that's a problem that I think is being solved responsibly by limiting the amount of times things are sold. And at the end of the day, the federal government's getting involved, right? So with privacy information, rules and regulations, just like GDPR, and here it's called TCPA, that says that you can't sell information unless they opted into it. And if you do, you're going to get a big fine. So that's been helpful to stop a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I think the biggest problem that I think has been solved was those bots that were, people trying to sell data and make it look like it's real time data, but it wasn't. But
This guy he's got a terrible thing for it in the UK. Sorry, carry on. I just remembered a guy called Peter who's done it for like 15 years and catches people out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, now there's I'm sure, companies like that, that you can ensure that, fraudulent, things aren't taking place on your landing pages, so.
Well, I think what he does is, and it comes, I guess, down to the quality of the lead as well. So this guy has stung so many people, it's unbelievable. I thought he disappeared, and then what did I see it on? Some Facebook channel. It was like Fraud Busters or something, and they mentioned a name, which is like, has anyone worked with this guy? And I know the guy who put the message, so I sent him a Skype going, I can't believe he's still doing it. So I first got hit by this guy in, we'd just done a management buyout of a company I used to work at, and taken over the company, and started running it. And we were buying all these leads for this government-backed projects called Shower Smart, I think it was at the time, where you bid something to your shower. So anyway, it was a massive lead opportunity, and we would tasked with generating hundreds of thousands of leads, and started buying some from him. And the client came back and said, there's something wrong with all these leads. Anyway, we found out he was doing exactly what you said. So we were buying co-reg leads, or I think there might have been postal leads. There was something, I can't remember, but he was getting list data and APIing it, so it just looked like real data, right? Because it's like low value, you're not doing any major checks, just verifying it. And then I heard he moved to Spain and Australia, and the guy who appeared the other day is in the Netherlands. I think it was in New Zealand that he struck him. It's just doing the same thing. He's APIing list data through. It's just incredible.
You made me think of another thing with calls. So I'm gonna get back to that in just a second. But there was a guy, and I'm not gonna name his names either, but notorious for doing this stuff in the industry. And he would get caught. I mean, there'd be, big lead buyers that would find out, based on all these IP, they'd be like, they get these leads and they match up the IPs with, the address. And generally your IP is within maybe a few miles, or if not at your address. These were thousands of miles away from the addresses. I mean, it was like, and this is before there was fraud technology, and they would get outed, they would get sued, but they wouldn't go out of business. They would continue to do, other business here. And then they would start doing the same thing to another lead buyer. And I could never figure out why. I mean, you don't want to litigate, and it becomes obviously you just want your money back and you want to move on, right? As a lead buyer. And you don't want to be spend the money on litigating, in courts and all this sort of stuff. But he eventually, he was in business for 15 years, and he actually had an exit where his company got acquired. And it just it boggles my mind, and that somebody that's a known fraudster continues to work in the industry and doesn't, can't be outed, So it's shameful. Hopefully there's technologies in place now that can stop a lot of this stuff. One of the things he would do was, once they started catching on to his tactics to generate data fraud, with leads, he started turning them into call transfers, because transfers became very popular here. One of the struggles, obviously, with lead buying is that you have to pick up the phone and call. If I can just have someone call me, I'm gonna like that a lot better, right? Because I don't have to worry about the outbound calls and all this sort of stuff. So what he would do, he would have he would generate these transfers, people calls to a mortgage company or finance company, and he had all these people with prepaid cell phones on the call, and and then he would also hire people from offshore at an hourly rate to be on the call and go, yeah, I would I'm interested, but can you just call me back later? I'm busy right now. And they would hang up, and
Unbelievable,
he
isn't
would
it?
get paid. He would get paid because they'd be on the call for at least 90
Yeah,
seconds.
yeah, yeah.
But they
It'd
would
just be
never
on
charge.
Twilio or something, and the conversion picks would fire, and that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would happen, and nothing, and very hard to catch because they're actually talking with somebody that says, "Yeah, I'm interested," but they would get paid, anywhere between $40 and $60 per call. Now, I could hire somebody, in offshore for far less to sit
yeah,
there and get that commission. Very hard to track. But at least it finally got tracked because obviously they didn't convert, right?
yeah,
They never
yeah.
converted, and quality went, and all that sort of stuff. So he had to like balance the fraud with the real stuff.
I think it's what happens on forms as well now. So they've taken it manual to get them in, which is click farms. So again, offshore, give them a
Yeah.
form, hijack IPs in like the UK or the US,
Yep.
match them up to addresses, and they'll just get like the phone book or whatever, and then start filling forms in and just do loads and loads and loads of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is why it's important, one, to have some type of technology or partner that can monitor for these sorts of things, and it's also really important to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in your organization on a minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day basis, and see, because you'll see that these things are not converting. You'll see irregular, issues with contact rate. Maybe the contact rate's higher than normal, or maybe it's just horrible. Immediately you have to stop that program and figure it out and get answers to it. Don't
Yeah.
wait, stop it. I've always told buyers, whenever you see something, pause it immediately. Don't wait.
Do you know what the
Figure it all
biggest
out.
thing as well? I always think as well is that this is why real time updates, not just to send leads out. So, do you know when we always talk about real time, right? So it's like call lead within minutes at most, like,
Yeah.
Make it seconds if you can. But what's really important as well is the feedback from that if you're using like a centralized system. So, for example, we'll have leads going into that come from a third party into one of our clients' call centers into a dialer. And then every day they drop all the dispositions onto an FTP, and then that automatically scrapes back up and adds the outcomes to the leads. But what happens is if you're working with affiliates, I mean, it can happen on Facebook and PPC, but it's less likely, but especially in the affiliate world, if you don't get those real-time updates and you're buying, I don't know, 1,000 leads a day, let's say, and each lead is £10, about $13, whatever the exchange rate is now, I've stopped looking, it's just bombed every time.
Yeah.
If you don't react real-time back, I see it every day, just boom, it plummets completely. And suddenly 10 grand has gone like that. And just like, if you API'd the disposition back, this would be spotted immediately. And you've, every 24 hours, you're potentially wasting the entire budget. Because, when you're working in this world and something goes wrong, or you get hit by a bot or something, some fraud happens, I see it almost as important in certain channels, not all of them, that you feed back the results as fast as you're actually going to be dialing the leads.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if that's one, another evolution that I think happened here was that for a long time, buyers didn't want to share that information for fear that, hey, if you're going to see how good I'm doing, you're going to just raise the prices, on the leads or something like that. But at the end of the day, because I worked on this lead gen side as well, and generated, tons of mortgage and insurance and solar leads. If I didn't know how well certain sources were doing for you, I'd be hard pressed to make it any better. But, so it's really, really important for a buyer to share that information on a regular basis to their partners. Whether it's, maybe you leave out some specifics, but you say, here are all the good leads, here are the bad leads, here are the ones that, turned into sales. And then that, partner can go back and optimize their own campaigns, because one thing about performance marketing and lead gen is all about optimization. Whether you're generating leads or you're buying leads, you're always tweaking to get the best results. And if you don't have that communication with your partners, you're doing yourself a disservice. A quick story. When I was generating leads for insurance, we landed this big company. The company was MetLife. Was it MetLife or Blue Shield? One massive company. We were sending hundreds of thousands of dollars of leads to them on a monthly basis. And we were so excited about this. And we, said, okay, great. How do we get these leads to you? Usually with all of our companies, it would be through an API, and we would send them to them in real time. And we post it into their CRM or their lead management system. And, that was normal business. Well, this massive company wanted us to send it to them in an Excel file every night. And so we're talking about thousands of leads worth thousands of dollars being sent in an Excel file at midnight to this company. And then they would take it, and I don't know what they would do, but they would, I guess, send it out to their agents across the country. So I said, well, okay, that's not optimal, but okay, we'll do this. And then I would, a week later, I go, how are the leads performing? Can you send us some, conversion data, tell us where things are at, so we can take it back and make sure we're driving the right good quality leads to you. And they said, well, we won't be able to get that to you for 6 months. And I was 6 months. 6 months is good. I'm going to have my marketing budget and my marketing strategy is going to be wildly different in 6 months, based on just, trends and keywords and all sorts of different things. And this is a massive company spending, millions of dollars on marketing that couldn't, one, get an API together, two, get any type of performance data for months. And so I told my boss at the time, I said, listen, we're making a lot of money off this company, but in 6 months, they're going to be gone. I'm just telling you that right now, because there's going to be some issue. It's not going to work. And they're going to find out 6 months from now. So all this money you're collecting, put it in the bank, save it, because it's not going to be here forever. You just know it's not going to work with a company that's not, doesn't have the right tools in place,
We still see it now, to be honest with you. I mean, like, we'll work with people where it's like you can just get an API, not even necessarily to update, it's like just an API to feed into or something. It's like, oh yeah, you just give us a month to do that. And you're like, just go and do it now. Like, what's the problem? Just get someone and go and do it, And it's like, I think when we spoke on our podcast, we were talking about whether people like fall into lead gen. There's no like course, there's not, it's like only experience that teaches you. And it almost feels like that's part of the reason why it is like it is in some cases, and especially for like brands that are potentially buying leads, is the sort of budget that can underpin this thing, which is potentially millions and millions of pounds or dollars. And, we don't treat these leads like the best way to convert them. It's like it's being missed sometimes.
Yeah, well, and then people ask why they get angry at lead generators, right? And they're not doing all these things to close the leads properly, but they get angry at the lead sellers and they say that the leads are bad, or there's a bad name in lead gen as a whole. Well, partly because, the processes aren't all aligned, and that's part of the problem. You're not going to, there's another story. I had a insurance buyer. As a marketing guy, I'd get all the sales guys that would call me into all the bad calls, right? The complaints about lead quality. And I got pulled into a call to talk about how bad the leads were with one of our buyers. And my first question is, okay, well, what do you do when you get the lead? We send it to you in real time. Do you call it? And he goes, no, I just send an email. And then I was, okay, not optimal, but do you call it after, maybe the next day or something? No, I just wait for them to call me. And I go, well, shoot, this is not going to work. Our leads can be amazing. but you're not following this process, that needs to take place. Because we would have guys be wildly successful with the same exact lead. Because don't forget, we would sell the lead 3 times, to 3 different companies. There's a guy that's doing phenomenal with the same exact lead, and another guy that's failing with it.
I was going to say that's going to become really apparent, isn't it? Suddenly, when you were talking, I can now see the impetus behind lead generation world for buyers, where it's like best practices. Because in a world without like set best practices, it's making me think as well, like things we could do to actually, like, because when you're sort of providing software into people, you're expecting they're just going to know how to use it, but really it's like, why don't you put together some best practices, and like, if you do this, you're going to get like 10 times the results if you don't.
Yeah, and every single lead generation company out there or agency should share that best practices that you put out there, because it's in the best interest of them that their lead buyers know how to close their leads. If they don't know, like I said, this guy said my leads were horrible, and he didn't, probably wanted a refund, probably went off and said, leads are horrible, leads suck, leads are bullshit, you can't do anything with leads. Well, not really. There's another guy calling that same lead that's doing very, very well. He just knows how to close them. He knows how to call them and what to do. He has a lead management system in place, a dialer, all these sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, everybody should promote that information out there to without hesitation.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'll look out for those best practices PDFs for
me. Just check it out on LinkedIn along with the 3 likes. There'll be
exactly.
So, Mike, I want to talk just a little bit about how you see the future of lead gen changing and developing over the next year or so, or whenever in the future.
Yeah. There's that question of like, has the lead gen process really changed? It really hasn't, over so many years. It's always kind of been the same, going to a form or generating a call or whatever it may be. But I think what's changing, at least here in the United States, and I hope across the world, is the more focus on consumer experience. I think lead gen companies are saying, really being more cautious of how they're treating a consumer, and how they're exposing what's going to take place. And maybe that's partly because of government intervention forcing them to do that. But I think lead gen companies are being more respectful of the consumer, or trying to. Good companies are doing that. They're really trying to help them find the service or answer to their thing. And I think that's a good thing. I think the lead gen gets a bad name for the reasons that we've talked about, right? And the fraud and all this sort of stuff. But in actuality, it's very great in that it helps consumers match up with different service providers that they would arguably have a hard time finding. Just going on Google and searching refinance rates is going to give you a short list of people. But going to a lead gen process, they'll find companies, or a directory. They'll be able to find, companies that that can help them. On the flip side, brands can't be an expert at everything. They're experts at mortgages, but they're not necessarily going to be marketing experts. It's very hard to do that. And plus, each brand has, I think, a ceiling of how much traffic they can actually generate with one brand. The biggest companies hit a ceiling, so they need partners, experts. And that's why they go to agencies and all this sorts. But they need experts that know how to generate inquiries with high intent. And that's, I think, what these lead gen companies are. They're performance marketers that are experts in whether it's mortgage or insurance, and they know how to drive traffic and turn those into qualified leads to help these other companies grow. So I'm happy to see that a lot of the fraud is, and a lot of the bad actors, I think, are being removed and being exposed here in the US. And I hopefully that happens across the world. They'll always be there, but yeah, I think the future is bright for lead generation partners with the promotion of best practices and transparency and all that sort of stuff.
I think one of the things I've thought, I think we spoke about this before, is like lead generators becoming brands themselves as well. So, do you know, when we talk about the customer experience, it's almost owning that customer experience. And so the final cherry on the cake is the delivery to a brand, but actually the experience that this prospect or consumer is going through is sort of controlled by the lead generation brand. In the same way comparison sites do it on a CPA.
Yeah, 100%. One of the companies here in the United States is called EverQuote. They do auto insurance leads, and they do tons of them. But they are very mindful of taking care of that consumer. That consumer that comes to their website, they consider it theirs, and they want to treat that consumer with all respect and that they can, and help that person find an auto insurance quote. So they take that approach. In the past, lead gen companies would, put up a ton of different websites, and which is fine. But their sole objection was to get somebody to that page and convert them and say, see you later. It wasn't about really helping curate maybe some different offers or different things that are perfect for that consumer. It was just like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, see you later. But I think more and more companies are doing that. They're mindful of their own brand and how they're treating consumers.
I think someone contacted me actually after you and I spoke on your podcast and said some of what you said resonated with me. But one thing he said is that sort of stuck with me since is that we have two clients, and it's the prospect and the client.
Yeah,
and that's the way they see it. He's like, I think they've even got it written on the wall in the office or something, like, we have two clients. I was like, that's the perfect way to think of lead gen for me.
Yeah, whoever that company is doing it right. They're thinking about it correctly.
Yeah.
Back to, lead gen has a bad, it's sometimes it's those guys that don't think that way, that are literally just trying to generate data and sell it. But I think, like I said, I think if we can get buyers to identify the good lead sources, that are doing the right thing, like that company, to demand that they're doing that and be able to close those leads appropriately, I think that's how the industry continues to grow, and those bad actors just get weeded out, because at the end of the day, their leads just aren't as good.
Yeah.
Cool. I just want to bring this back to lead generation world as we kind of get towards the close of this cycle, and just I was going to ask you how.
We're not going to talk all day. We can talk all day.
We've been talking that long that I can see my wife I'm in the office at the minute. She keeps walking past because I told her to come down here and pick me up.
There you go. Okay, yeah. So
my daughter will be appearing here somewhere.
But I just wanted to ask you about lead generation world, and specifically the conference, the exhibition, in relation to COVID. Did you guys go digital as a response to not being able to do a live one, or what are the plans for?
Yeah. So the show is April 12th and 13th in London, at one of the etc. venues there. Really, really great. It's going to be an in-person conference as long as we can have it, as long as regulations open up by April. We're going to do that. We're not going to turn it into a virtual conference. It's either it's going to be in person or it gets postponed to a later month. But right now, being 90 days out, it seems likely that the regulations will open up by April. But so we're working towards that, and we're really excited. If there's companies out there that have the same sort of beliefs and want to be a part of an event that really truly is trying to bring the industry together, we've got booth, you can have a stand, a booth, or sponsorships and all that sort of stuff. And we're really looking for good companies in the UK and Europe to help support the initiative, because I think in the long term, it's really going to help everybody out. So, and we've got registration is open right now, and it's fully refundable. So if for some reason you just can't go, or it gets postponed or canceled or whatever, any reason, frankly, you can get your money back. So there's really no risk in signing up today if you're interested in supporting the event and going.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people listening will definitely be interested. I know if we're allowed to go, if we're allowed to, we'll definitely want to come up.
Yeah. And I'd also add that, if there are lead buyers there in the UK that want to attend and maybe the conference is too expensive, to reach out to me. We want them there. So if they need some assistance in a free pass or a discount or whatever it may be, to reach out to me, because like I said, it's really important for us to have the buyers there at the show to be a part of the conversation. And we'll have content from, everything from how to, generate. It's not just buyer focused. We have a full gamut of information and content that will be on display, but we will have specific sessions on how best practices on how to generate leads and how to close leads. And we'll even bring some companies over from the US that do it really, really well, and they'll share exactly how they do it. So
brilliant. It's the more I think about it, when we were just talking earlier, and I can now see the sort of the real impetus behind lead gen world, especially like getting best practices and sharing knowledge, like you said, between companies. But it's really weird because they're complementary and work together, but it's almost as if no one's ever thought that. So in a way to like bring them together more is perfect.
Well, hopefully it's a success and we can bring some individuals there. And, I appreciate you having me on the podcast and talking about it.
No, it's been brilliant, and it's been fantastic getting your insights as well, and the stories and stuff. It's been great.
Yeah, anytime.
Well, we'll definitely share links and stuff along with this podcast whenever we share it out. But for anyone listening, it's the Lead Generation World podcast, and obviously you can check out the Lead Generation World show. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Michael. We've really, really enjoyed having you on.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks, Simon.
Cheers. Thanks, Mike. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast, the show for serious lead generators. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.